Every mystery has a voice. Few dare to listen.
Section 1. The spectacles on the oak stairs. Rain had been falling upon Vane Court since 4 o'clock, with the patient persistence of an unpaid creditor. By 11 o'clock the lawns were black mirrors, the yew trees dripped upon the gravel, and the long windows of the house shone with a yellow, rather accusatory light. Mrs. Agnes Pike discovered Sir Alister Vane at 11:32 p.m. She had gone upstairs because she had remembered, with the infallible instinct of a housekeeper, that the drawing-room fire had been left improperly banked. Halfway across the landing she saw a dark shape upon the great oak staircase. For one moment she believed it was a coat. Then the coat moved. It did not move much. Dead men are notoriously economical in their gestures. Mrs. Pike stopped. Sir Alister? There was no answer. She descended 3 steps, then stopped again. Sir Alister lay awkwardly upon the stairs, one shoulder twisted beneath him, his silver hair disordered against the polished oak. His right hand was open, his left had closed into a fist. Above him, on the 4th step, lay his spectacles. They were broken. One lens was cracked across like a frozen pond. The tortoiseshell frame had snapped cleanly at the bridge, and one of the slender arms pointed upward toward the landing. Mrs. Pike stared at them. Oh, dear God! The house, which had been quiet a moment before, seemed suddenly to acquire ears. If you are listening to this mystery from somewhere far from Belminster, tell us where you are watching from, and what time it is there right now. Put it in the comments. There is something peculiarly comforting about knowing that a murder story is being heard in several different hours at once. Mrs. Pike backed away from the staircase and rang the bell. The sound traveled through Vane Court with a solemn metallic insistence. Thomas Rooke appeared first. The butler was tall, gaunt, and so perfectly composed that the sight of him beside a dead man produced an impression of social impropriety. "What has happened, Mrs. Pike?" "I found him." Rooke looked down. He did not gasp. He did not cross himself. He merely removed one glove and touched 2 fingers to Sir Alister's wrist. Then he looked at the spectacles. "Sir Alister's," he said. Mrs. Pike nodded. "Perhaps he fell." "Yes," said Rooke. There was a pause. "Perhaps," he added. The police arrived shortly before midnight. Inspector Arthur Belling came up the staircase with the expression of a man who had been called from bed to discover that the aristocracy had once again contrived to make a simple matter inconvenient. Behind him came Dr. Matthew Greaves, carrying his medical bag. Lord Peter Wimsey arrived 20 minutes later. He had been staying at the Crown Arms in the neighboring town, where an invitation to dinner with Reverend Septimus Bell had been interrupted by a telephone message concerning the death at Vane Court. Wimsey entered the hall, removing his gloves, his evening clothes remarkably unruffled by the weather. "Good evening," he said. "Or, under the circumstances, perhaps I should say good morning." Inspector Belling looked at him. "I wasn't expecting you, nor was the deceased, I imagine. Yet here we both are." Belling sighed. Wimsey approached the staircase. He did not immediately look at the body. Instead, he looked at the staircase itself, the broad oak treads, the carved balustrade, the runner, the shadows cast by the lamps. Then he looked at Sir Alister, then upward, then down again. Dr. Greaves was examining the dead man's head. "Fatal injury," he said. "I shall need to examine him properly, but I suspect he died from the fall." "Quite," said Belling. Wimsey raised an eyebrow. "Did he?" The inspector turned. "Doctor's opinion. I merely asked a grammatical question." Belling frowned. Wimsey smiled faintly. "I find grammar considerably safer than homicide." He bent at last toward the body. Sir Alister Vane's face was pale, severe even in death. There was a small abrasion near his temple. His dinner jacket was slightly disarranged, but there was no obvious sign of a struggle. Wimsey's gaze moved slowly over the clothing, the hands, the stairs, and finally the spectacles. He did not touch them. "Were these found precisely there?" he asked. Mrs. Pike answered from the landing. "Yes, my lord." "Who moved them?" "No one." "And the body?" "No one." "Interesting." He said the word lightly, almost apologetically, as though he had noticed an unusually tasteful piece of wallpaper. Belling folded his arms. "It looks to me like a straightforward fall." "Most straightforward things," said Wimsey, "are improved by being examined from the back." He climbed 2 steps. The spectacles were plainly visible now. One broken lens caught the lamplight. Wimsey studied them with an expression of mild curiosity. "Sir Alister always wore spectacles?" he asked. "Always," said Mrs. Pike. "At dinner?" "Yes." "In the evening?" "Yes." "Going downstairs?" Mrs. Pike hesitated. "I suppose so." Wimsey glanced at her. "Supposition is a most industrious servant, Mrs. Pike. It does an astonishing amount of work when nobody is looking." She colored slightly. Inspector Belling gave an impatient cough. "There's no mystery about spectacles breaking when a man falls." "None at all," said Wimsey. He looked again at the staircase, provided, of course, that the spectacles were on the man when he fell. The inspector stared at him. Wimsey said nothing more. He slipped his hands into his pockets and tilted his head. "A curious habit," he murmured, "for an accident to arrange its evidence so tidily. But there, I mustn't accuse the staircase of vanity before I have interviewed it properly." The old staircase was entitled to counsel. Outside, the rain struck the windows in long, thin fingers. On the 4th stair, the broken spectacles remained exactly where they had fallen, or where someone had put them, and Lord Peter Wimsey, standing beneath the yellow hall light, looked at them as though they had just told him something exceedingly rude. Section 2. The House That Knew Nothing. By breakfast, Vane Court had acquired the peculiar atmosphere of a respectable household obliged to admit that something indecent had happened under its roof. Rain still tapped upon the windows, though more gently now. The dining room smelled of coffee, toast, damp wool, and police paperwork. Inspector Arthur Belling sat at the head of the table with a notebook open before him. Mrs. Agnes Pike stood beside the sideboard, as though the law had merely interrupted the ordinary business of supervising marmalade. Lord Peter Wimsey entered last. "Good morning," he said. "I see we have all survived the night, which is gratifyingly inconsiderate of death." Nobody laughed. Wimsey poured himself coffee. "Now," said Belling, "I want statements." "Splendid," said Wimsey. "Nothing settles a household so efficiently as discovering what everyone remembers incorrectly." Belling ignored him. Thomas Rooke was questioned first. He stood beside the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back. "I retired to the servants' hall at approximately 10:45, he said. "Did you hear anything?" "A sound." "What sort of sound?" "A disturbance on the staircase." "What time?" Rooke considered. "About 11:20. Belling wrote it down. Wimsey looked up from his coffee. "Your estimate?" "Yes, my lord." "Based upon?" "The hall clock." There was a small silence. Wimsey glanced toward the corridor. "The hall clock?" "Yes." "Very good." He returned to his coffee. Mrs. Pike came next. She repeated that she had discovered Sir Alister at 11:32. Her account of the discovery was exact, almost painfully so. "You heard nothing before finding him?" Belling asked. "No." "You are certain?" "Yes." Wimsey looked at her. "You told me last night that you heard footsteps." Mrs. Pike's mouth tightened. "I heard something." "Footsteps, I suppose." "There is that word again." She frowned. "What word?" "Suppose." Mrs. Pike stared at him, then looked toward Belling. "I heard footsteps," she said finally. "When?" "Before I found Sir Alister." "Immediately before?" "No." "How long before?" "I couldn't say." "From where?" "The staircase." "Going up or down?" Mrs. Pike hesitated. "I couldn't tell." Wimsey nodded politely. "Quite." Inspector Belling tapped his pencil. "Did you see anyone?" "No." "Then the footsteps are of no use." "Possibly," said Wimsey. The inspector looked irritated. "Everything is possibly with you. An excellent state of affairs. Certainty is terribly fatiguing." Reverend Septimus Bell arrived shortly afterward. He had a large wet umbrella and the expression of a man who had spent the night regretting several conversations. Belling asked him when he had last spoken to Sir Alister. "At approximately 10 minutes to 10. "Telephone?" "Yes." "From here?" "Yes." "How long?" 5 or 6 minutes. Wimsey looked toward the telephone in the hall. "Did Sir Alister seem agitated?" The vicar paused. "Not precisely." Annoyed, perhaps. Frightened. No. Did he say anything unusual? Reverend Bell adjusted his spectacles. He asked about Margaret Vale. The room became quieter. Wimsey did not react visibly. Belling looked up. Who is Margaret Vale? A schoolmistress, said Bell. Many years ago. Dead? No. Where is she now? Bell hesitated. I don't know. Wimsey stirred his coffee. An admirable village tradition, he said. Nobody knows where anybody is, yet everyone knows precisely what everyone did 30 years ago. Reverend Bell gave him a troubled look. Julian Vane entered then. He looked tired, angry, and considerably less composed than he had the previous evening. His muddy boots had been removed, but a dark stain remained along one trouser cuff. Belling asked him where he had gone after leaving Sir Alister's study. To my room. How long were you there? Until I went outside. When? About 11. Why? I wanted air. Did anyone see you? Not at first. Wimsey regarded him with mild interest. Mr. Vane, do you remember hearing the hall clock? Julian frowned. No, the staircase clock. There is no staircase clock. Precisely. Belling looked annoyed. What's the point? I'm not sure yet. That answer appeared to satisfy Wimsey. Eleanor Vane entered last. She looked pale but composed. Did your uncle seem troubled after dinner? Wimsey asked. Yes. About what? I don't know. Did he mention Margaret Vale? She looked at him sharply. Yes. When? Yesterday afternoon. What did he say? He said that some old wrongs had a habit of surviving the people who committed them. Wimsey's expression did not change. And did you understand what he meant? No. Do you believe him to have been afraid? Eleanor looked toward the rain-darkened windows. I believe my uncle was afraid of something. Inspector Belling closed his notebook. There we are. A great deal of atmosphere and very little evidence. Wimsey smiled. Evidence is shy, Inspector. One mustn't frighten it. He rose and walked into the hall. The clock there stood beneath a carved wooden arch. Its hands pointed to 12 minutes past 10. Wimsey watched the second hand move. Tick, tick, tick. He took out his watch. For several seconds he compared the two. Then he said nothing. Behind him, Mrs. Pike was explaining to Belling that the hall clock had always been reliable. Wimsey turned his head. Always? Always, my lord. Excellent, he smiled. Then we shall be able to trust it completely. The clock continued ticking, 4 minutes behind the hour. And somewhere upstairs, behind closed doors and rain-muted windows, the dead man's spectacles waited in silence. He bent nearer without touching the case. Does Sir Alister keep any particular habits? Mrs. Pike answered from behind him. He was very particular. Supper at 9, papers at 9:30, telephone calls recorded in his diary. He disliked lateness. An admirable weakness, said Wimsey. It gives one's enemies something punctual to misunderstand. Belling came into the hall. Have you found something? No. Then why are you smiling? My dear Inspector, a man may smile at a clock without suspecting it of murder. He replaced his watch in his pocket and glanced once more toward the staircase. But I shall be interested to know who wound it last. Nobody answered. Section 3. The nephew with muddy boots. By 10 o'clock the rain had weakened to a fine mist, but the gravel outside Vane Court remained black and shining beneath the windows. Inspector Arthur Belling had spent the morning acquiring evidence with the industrious satisfaction of a man whose favorite theory had just been given a pair of muddy boots. Julian Vane's boots stood beside the back entrance. They were large, brown, and thickly coated with wet earth. Belling regarded them as though they were a confession waiting to be notarized. Julian stood nearby with his hands in his pockets. I told you, he said. I went outside. So you did, and I told you why. You wanted air. Yes. In the rain? Julian stared at him. It was not raining heavily. Belling glanced through the window. It was raining. I wanted to walk. Where? Down to the lake. How long? I don't know. 20 minutes? Perhaps. 40? Possibly. An hour. Julian's temper rose. I wasn't carrying a stopwatch. Lord Peter Wimsey, seated in the drawing room, looked up from a book. A regrettable omission, he observed. Timepieces are so useful when one wishes to remain innocent. Julian turned toward him. Are you accusing me? No. Wimsey closed the book. I find accusations terribly final. Questions are much more entertaining. Inspector Belling took a step closer to Julian. You quarreled with Sir Alistair last night. Yes, loudly. Yes, about money. Yes, you threatened him. Julian's face hardened. I said I wished he would go to the devil. That sounds like a threat. It was a sentiment. Did you strike him? No. Did you lay hands on him? No. Belling looked toward the boots. Then why were you outside? Julian gave a bitter laugh. Because I was angry. Angry enough to kill him? No. The answer came quickly. Wimsey watched him. Belling immediately stiffened. What? The mud. It's obvious. Obvious things are generally the most dangerous. Wimsey examined the soles. The lake path? Julian nodded. Yes. Did you walk all the way? Yes. Alone? Yes. Did you meet anyone? No. Did anyone see you? Not that I know. Wimsey stood. Splendid. Belling looked triumphant. There you are. Where? The opportunity. Wimsey smiled. Ah, opportunity. The most sociable of murder suspects. It turns up everywhere. Belling ignored him. He turned back to Julian. You had the motive. You had the quarrel. You had the opportunity to leave the house unnoticed, and you admit you were angry. I also admit I went to the lake. Does that make me guilty? It makes you suspicious. There's a difference, not always. From the doorway, Eleanor Vane spoke. Julian did not kill him. Everyone looked round. Eleanor stood perfectly still. How can you know? Belling asked. Because I know, Julian. That isn't evidence. No, she said quietly. It isn't. Julian looked at her. Thank you. I didn't say you were incapable of it. He stared. She looked away. The silence was broken by Mrs. Agnes Pike, who entered carrying a tray. Tea. Inspector Belling stared at her. Tea? People drink it when they're distressed. Wimsey smiled. Mrs. Pike has a firmer grasp of criminal psychology than most textbooks. She set the tray down. Belling returned to Julian. What time did you come back? About 11. Exactly? No. 10:55? Perhaps. 11? Yes. 11:05? I don't know. Belling wrote something down. Wimsey noticed the pencil. You're making a list of times? Of course. Excellent. We shall have enough time soon to populate a small railway timetable. Julian looked at Wimsey. For the first time, Julian seemed to understand that the amusement was a surface habit, not indifference. Belling picked up the boots. There is mud on the heel that looks fresh, because I was outside. And the stairs? What about them? Were you on them after you came back? Yes. Then you could have left mud near the body. I didn't. We'll see. Julian's jaw tightened. I came through the back entrance. I went upstairs. I changed my shirt. Then I went to my room. Anyone see you? No. Convenient. Is that a crime? No. It seems to be one here. Wimsey intervened. Inspector, if we arrest everyone whose movements are inconvenient, we shall eventually have to arrest the house. Belling gave him a sour look. I'm not arresting anybody. Good. It would complicate the furniture. Wimsey turned toward Eleanor. Miss Vane, when did you last see your cousin? Before he went outside. Did he have the boots on then? Yes. Were they muddy? No. Thank you. Nothing more followed. Julian looked at him suspiciously. Why ask that? Wimsey lifted one eyebrow. Because I am a great believer in boots knowing where they have been. He walked to the window. Outside, the garden path led toward a dark line of trees, and beyond them, unseen from the house, the lake. Belling came beside him. I think he's lying. I think Mr. Vane is angry. That wasn't my question. No, it was a much more interesting one. Belling sighed. You make everything difficult. My dear Inspector, murder is difficult. I merely declined to make it easier by guessing. From the hall came the sound of the telephone bell. Everyone turned. Thomas Rook answered it. A moment later he appeared in the doorway. "For you, my lord." Wimsey crossed the room. "Thank you," he said, and replaced the receiver. Belling watched him. Who was it? Someone who wished to know whether the police had arrested Julian Vane. "And I said no." Belling frowned. Wimsey looked toward Julian. The young man had lowered his eyes. Outside, water dripped from the eaves. The muddy boots remained beside the door, bearing evidence of a walk that might mean nothing at all. Yet Inspector Belling had already begun building his case around them. Section 4. The irrelevant questions. The afternoon settled over Vane Court with the exhausted quiet of a household that had been interrogated beyond the limits of human dignity. Inspector Arthur Belling had gone to examine the grounds, taking Julian Vane's muddy boots with him, as though they constituted a portable witness. Lord Peter Wimsey remained in the house. He had developed an interest in carpets. Thomas Rooke stood in the passage watching him inspect the runner on the staircase. "Is there something upon it, my lord?" "Several things," said Wimsey. "Dust, wool, 2 centuries of respectable footsteps, and one alarming stain which I sincerely hope is raspberry jam." "It is raspberry jam. Thank heaven, the household retains some standards." Wimsey crouched beside the carpet, studying the fibers without touching them. "How often is this cleaned?" "Twice a week." "By whom?" "Mrs. Pike." "Always?" "Yes. And last night." "Not last night. Why? It was not cleaning day." "Good. One hates to discover a conspiracy among the housemaids." Thomas permitted himself the faintest smile. Wimsey rose and looked toward the staircase. "Does Sir Alister usually use these stairs after dinner?" "Yes. Every night?" "Nearly." "Wearing spectacles?" Thomas hesitated. "Always, I should think." "Should think? Sir Alister could not read without them." "Could he walk without them?" "Certainly." "Could he see clearly?" "No." Wimsey nodded as though this were a point in an argument about umbrellas. "Thank you." Thomas looked puzzled. "That is all?" "For the moment." Wimsey wandered into the drawing room. The curtains were drawn. He examined their position, then opened one and looked toward the dark garden. "Who closes these?" "Mrs. Pike." "At what hour?" "Usually after dinner." "Usually." "Sometimes Sir Alister preferred them open." "Last night?" Thomas paused. "They were open when I left the room." Wimsey glanced at him. "At what time?" "Approximately 10. "Approximately 10 o'clock. Your approximation is improving." He crossed to the window and listened. Rain ticked against the glass. The room was thickly carpeted, the walls hung with bookshelves and old portraits. Sound from the corridor seemed strangely muffled. "Interesting acoustics," Wimsey murmured. Thomas looked at him. "My lord." "Nothing." He closed the curtain again. Lydia March entered, carrying a bundle of correspondence. She looked as composed as ever, though her fingers were tightly folded around the papers. "Miss March," said Wimsey, "perfect timing. I was just wondering whether Sir Alister kept his spectacles on while reading letters." "Always." "And when writing?" "Yes. Even when walking about." "Usually." "Usually again. This house is becoming positively theological." Lydia did not smile. Wimsey noticed. "Forgive me, a poor joke." He pointed toward the bundle. "Those are his papers?" "Some of them." "Where were they kept?" "In the study. Locked." "Sometimes." "Was the study locked last night?" "No." "Why not?" Sir Alister disliked locked doors inside the house. An admirable principle. He walked toward the study door. It stood slightly open. Wimsey stopped before it. He did not enter. "Who found it like this?" "I did." "When?" "This morning." "Was it open last night?" "I don't remember." "Quite." He looked at the handle. "No scratches?" "No." "No damaged lock?" "No." "Excellent." Lydia's expression tightened. "Is something wrong?" "Not at all." Wimsey smiled. "Doors are like butlers. They become extremely interesting only when they refuse to behave." He moved away. "Tell me, Miss March, where did Sir Alister keep his spare spectacles?" "I don't know." "His case?" "In the study." "Always?" "Yes." "Was it there this morning?" "Yes." Wimsey nodded. "Thank you." She turned to leave. "Miss March?" "Yes." "Did Sir Alister ever remove his spectacles when he was angry?" She looked surprised. I don't know. Of course. She left. Mrs. Agnes Pike appeared immediately, carrying linen. Wimsey looked at her. Mrs. Pike, one last nuisance. I expect so. Was Sir Alister particular about his curtains? Very. Would he object to them being open after dark? If he were working, yes. Did he work late? Frequently. Did he ever walk downstairs without his spectacles? No. Never? Not unless he had forgotten them. Did he forget them often? Never. Wimsey smiled. That is very useful. She frowned. How? I haven't the faintest idea. Mrs. Pike stared at him. You make a joke of everything, my lord. No. Only of the things that frighten me. She studied him for a moment, uncertain whether he had made another joke. Then she said, there was something else. Wimsey waited. The study lamp. What about it? It was still burning when I found him. Was it? Yes. Was that unusual? No. Sir Alister often left it on. Very good. He glanced once more toward the staircase. Did you notice anything else? Mrs. Pike shook her head. Nothing at all. An excellent phrase, said Wimsey. People use it whenever there is something they would rather not notice. She flushed. I have told you everything. I am sure you believe that. She left with the linen. Wimsey remained alone in the hall. He took out his cigarette case, considered it, and put it away. Then he looked at the staircase. The broken spectacles had been removed for examination, leaving only the faint impression where they had rested. He climbed to the 4th step. From there he looked toward the study, then toward the drawing room, then down the staircase. He said nothing. Thomas Rooke appeared behind him. My lord. Yes. Inspector Belling asked whether you had discovered anything. And what did you tell him? That you were examining carpets. Excellent. Thomas hesitated. Is that true? Entirely. Wimsey descended 1 step. Carpets, curtains, doors, lamps, habits, spectacles, all the small furniture of life. Thomas waited. Wimsey smiled. Never underestimate small furniture, Mr. Rooke. Great crimes have a tiresome habit of leaving their fingerprints upon ordinary things. Then he walked toward the study. The door remained slightly ajar. He stopped before it without entering. For several seconds he listened. There was no sound. At last he said, very softly, most peculiar. And whatever he had found peculiar, he kept to himself. Section 5. The 4-minute error. By 4 o'clock the rain had stopped, leaving Belminster washed, grey, and thoroughly disapproving. Lord Peter Wimsey had requisitioned the library table, 3 chairs, a railway timetable, Sir Alister's diary, and Inspector Arthur Belling's patience. The latter was the least cooperative. You cannot seriously expect me to rebuild the entire evening from clocks, said Belling. No, said Wimsey. I expect you to rebuild it from times. Clocks merely have the decency to display their prejudices. Dr. Matthew Greaves stood beside the table, reading his own notes. You asked for my original examination. I did, and I have already told the inspector what I found. Indeed, but I should like you to tell me what you found before anyone told you what time Sir Alister ought to have died. The doctor frowned. I examined the body at 11:52. The injuries were consistent with a fatal fall. There was no reason then to suspect anything else. I didn't ask what you suspected. Greaves looked at him. I estimated death between 10:30 and 10:45. Belling glanced up. You said closer to 11. After you told me the household believed the fall occurred shortly before 11:32, said Greaves. I considered the circumstances again. Wimsey's eyebrows rose. And did the body change its mind? No. Excellent. Corpses are notoriously stubborn about evidence. Belling folded his arms. So your original estimate stands? My physical observations stand. The later estimate was necessarily less certain. Wimsey wrote nothing. Instead, he took Sir Alister's diary and opened it. Telephone call to Reverend Septimus Bell, 9:54. 10:54, said Belling. 9:54. The vicar said 10 minutes to 10. People and clocks have a complicated relationship. Greaves leaned over the page. The exchange record? Correct. Wimsey produced a slip of paper. The call began at 9:54 p.m. and lasted 6 minutes. Belling stared. That places Sir Alistair alive at 10 o'clock, precisely, and after that, unknown. Then the call proves nothing about 10:30. No, Wimsey smiled. But it prevents us from murdering him before 10. He turned another page. Lydia March says she saw him at 10:17. Belling nodded. She brought correspondence and left at 10:23. Yes. Did she actually see him alive? She says so. Good. Wimsey made another note. Now, Julian. The young man had been brought into the library. I returned from the lake at about 11, he said. About. Yes. Your route? Through the east garden, then the back door. Distance, perhaps half a mile from the house to the lake. And how long did you walk? 20 minutes, maybe 30. Were you running? No. Were you carrying anything? No. Did you see anyone? No. Did you hear anything? Nothing. Wimsey looked at him. Nothing at all? No. Not even the hall clock? Julian frowned. I wasn't in the hall. Quite. Wimsey dismissed him with a nod. First was the hall clock, brought down from its alcove. The second was the kitchen clock. The third was a small carriage clock from the drawing room. Now, he said, let us hear from the household's mechanical witnesses. He set them side by side. The hall clock showed 4 minutes behind Wimsey's watch. The kitchen clock showed 7 minutes ahead. The carriage clock had stopped at 10:18. Belling stared. That one is broken. Apparently. Why keep it? Because people are sentimental about clocks. They forgive them almost anything. Wimsey wound the carriage clock. It gave a reluctant tick, then another. Thomas Rook told us he heard a disturbance at approximately 11:20, according to the hall clock. Belling nodded, which means 11:16 by yours. Possibly. Mrs. Pike discovered the body at 11:32 by her watch. Correct. Yet the hall clock would have shown 11:28. Correct. And the kitchen clock would have shown 11:39. Correct. Belling looked irritated. So which time is right? The interesting question is not which clock lies, then what is? Why everyone remembers the event as though the clocks agreed. Silence followed. Dr. Greaves looked thoughtful. The body was already beyond the period I would expect at 11:32. Yes, then the fatal injury occurred earlier. Wimsey did not answer. He opened the diary again. Telephone call, 9:54. Lydia's visit, 10:17. Julian's departure, 9:41. Julian's return, approximately 11. Mrs. Pike's discovery, 11:32. Belling pointed to the list. And the murder. Wimsey looked up. I haven't said there was a murder. Belling stared. You've been behaving as though there was. I have been behaving as though there is a corpse. One must begin with what one knows. The inspector grunted. Wimsey folded his hands. Let us suppose only this. The medical evidence places death around 10:30 to 10:45. The telephone establishes Sir Alistair alive at 10 o'clock. Lydia establishes him alive at 10:17. The later household memories are increasingly dependent upon clocks. So nothing. Wimsey smiled. That is the beauty of chronology. It can be perfectly accurate and still lead everyone astray. He stood and walked toward the window. Beyond it, the wet lawn reflected the pale afternoon sky. Inspector, how long would it take an ordinary man to walk from the study to the staircase? Less than a minute. And from the back entrance to the lake? 10 minutes, perhaps. Julian said 20. He may have wandered. Indeed. Wimsey looked at the muddy boots resting beside the door, then at the clock, then at the diary. His expression remained unreadable. Dr. Greaves closed his notebook. You think the time of death is important? Wimsey smiled faintly. Time is always important, Doctor. It is the only witness who cannot be cross-examined. He replaced the diary on the table. For a moment nobody spoke. Then the hall clock struck 5. The kitchen clock answered 7 minutes later, and the carriage clock, having been wound, remained stubbornly silent. Wimsey listened to all three. Most obliging, he murmured. Inspector Belling looked at him. What's obliging? Wimsey picked up his gloves. The fact that they disagree. He left the library without another explanation. Section 6, the name in the old ledger. The discovery of Margaret Vale began with dust. It was not in itself a remarkable discovery. Vane Court contained enough dust to support several generations of archaeologists, provided they possessed strong lungs and weak principles. But Lord Peter Wimsey had developed the habit of opening drawers, which respectable people preferred to leave closed. Lydia March found him in the study shortly after 5, examining a narrow cabinet beside the writing desk. "I thought you had finished there," she said. "My dear Miss March, one never finishes with a cabinet. One merely reaches the point at which it becomes impolite to continue." She looked at the open drawer. "That contains old parish material. How fortunate. It has nothing to do with Sir Alister's death. Then it will be perfectly safe from me." Wimsey removed a ledger. Its leather cover was cracked, its pages yellowed, and its edges dark with age. He opened it carefully. The handwriting changed several times through the volume. Names, donations, school accounts, disciplinary notes, the ordinary machinery of village respectability. Then he stopped. "Margaret Vale." Lydia went very still. Wimsey did not look at her immediately. "Schoolmistress? Yes. Dismissed? Yes. For theft? I believe so. Believe? I was not here then. Quite." He turned a page. There was a notation in Sir Alister's handwriting, written decades later in the margin. "Reconsidered. Evidence insufficient." Wimsey's expression altered almost imperceptibly. Sir Alister had been reconsidering the case. "I knew he was interested in it." "How recently?" "For several months." "Why?" "I don't know." "You worked for him 12 years." "Yes. People who work for barristers for 12 years usually know why the barrister is interested in something." Lydia's face tightened. Sir Alister did not confide everything. No, that would have been terribly inconvenient for a barrister. Wimsey continued reading. A second note appeared. "MVD, I do not steal the money." Beneath it was a date from 6 months earlier. Lydia sat down. Sir Alister believed she was innocent? He came to believe it. Why? "I don't know." Wimsey looked at her. "You knew Margaret Vale?" "No." "Never met her?" "Of course not." "Then you know her name only from Sir Alister's investigation?" "Yes." There was a pause. "Miss March, have you ever been called Margaret?" She stared at him. "No." Wimsey closed the ledger. "I see. That is an extraordinary question. Most ordinary questions are exhausted by the time one reaches the end of a murder investigation." He did not pursue it. Instead, he opened another drawer. Inside lay a bundle of letters, tied with faded blue ribbon. One envelope was missing. The remaining letters bore dates spanning nearly 40 years. Wimsey examined them without comment. Lydia watched him. "Is something missing?" "Yes." "How do you know?" "Because people rarely tie letters together with a ribbon merely to make an attractive package and then leave an empty place in the middle." He held up the bundle. "There was once another letter here." Lydia said nothing. "Did Sir Alister remove it?" "I don't know." "Did you?" "No." Wimsey replaced the letters. At that moment, Eleanor Vane appeared in the doorway. "Peter, come in." She entered cautiously. "I have been speaking with Reverend Bell, and has the village survived? He told me about Margaret Vale." Wimsey nodded. "What did he say?" "That she disappeared after the accusation. Her name was ruined. She left Belminster." "Did he know where she went?" "No." "Interesting." Eleanor looked at the ledger. "Did you find something?" "Only a name. Margaret Vale." "Yes?" She hesitated. "Uncle mentioned her yesterday. What exactly did he say?" "That he had spent 30 years believing one version of a story, and the last 6 months discovering that the story was wrong." Wimsey's face remained composed. "Did he say who had lied?" "No." "Did he name anyone?" "No." "Did he seem afraid?" Eleanor looked down. "Yes? Of whom?" "I don't know." Wimsey nodded. He neither pressed nor reassured her. Reverend Septimus Bell arrived a few minutes later, summoned by a message from Eleanor. He removed his wet coat and stood beside the desk. "Lord Peter, Reverend, I understand you have found the ledger." "I have." Bell looked troubled. "Then you know about Margaret?" "I know that Sir Alister believed she was innocent." Bell sighed. "So he finally discovered it." "Discovered what?" "That the money had not been stolen by her." "Who stole it?" Bell hesitated. I cannot say. Cannot? Will not, perhaps. An important distinction. The vicar looked toward the rain-streaked window. Some truths are cruelly timed. Indeed, Margaret Vale died believing herself disgraced. Did she? Bell looked at him sharply. No. I mean, she lived for many years. Where? I don't know. Wimsey said nothing. Bell's eyes fell upon the ledger. Sir Alister wanted to clear her name, apparently. And now he is dead. Yes? The vicar swallowed. I feared something like this. Wimsey's gaze sharpened. You feared Sir Alister would be killed? No, I feared the past would return. Wimsey gave a small, courteous inclination of the head. The past has a tiresome habit of doing precisely that. Bell left. Eleanor remained. Peter, do you think Margaret Vale has anything to do with Uncle's death? Wimsey looked at the broken spine of the old ledger. I think dead people are generally less dangerous than living memories. That isn't an answer. No, he smiled. It is merely the answer I am prepared to give. He returned the ledger to the drawer. Then he noticed a folded sheet beneath it. The paper bore Sir Alister's handwriting. Only one sentence was visible. Tomorrow I shall ask her why. Wimsey read it once, then folded it again. He did not explain whom her meant. Wimsey regarded the sentence for several silent seconds. Outside, the last light faded from Belminster, and in the quiet study, the name Margaret Vale ceased to be an old village scandal and became something much more uncomfortable, a question that had survived its author. Section 7, the door that wasn't locked. By 6:30, Vane Court had settled into that peculiar evening quiet which belongs to houses where everyone is pretending that nothing dreadful has happened. Lord Peter Wimsey was in the hall when Mrs. Agnes Pike came towards him carrying a folded cloth. She stopped beside the staircase. My lord. Yes, I remembered something. Wimsey turned. That is generally more useful than remembering nothing. Mrs. Pike looked uneasy. About the study. I am listening. The door. What about it? It was open. Wimsey waited. I told the inspector I couldn't remember. Why? I was frightened. Of what? Of saying the wrong thing. An understandable fear. People are forever punished for being accurate at inconvenient moments. She glanced toward the staircase. When I found Sir Alister, the study door was ajar. Not closed. No. Not locked. No. Was that unusual? Yes. Why? Sir Alister disliked locking doors, but he always closed the study door when he was working. Wimsey nodded. Thank you. Mrs. Pike looked relieved. Then she said, There is more. Of course. I heard the footsteps from the study. Wimsey's expression remained still. You told Inspector Belling they came from the staircase. I thought they did. And now? I am certain. How certain? Certain enough to lose sleep over it. Excellent. Sleep is overrated. She looked offended. Wimsey softened his tone. Tell me exactly what you heard. 2 footsteps, perhaps 3, then nothing. Walking? Yes. Quickly? No. Slowly? Ordinarily. Did you hear the staircase creak? No. Any door? No. Then why did you think they were on the staircase? Because I heard them from the landing. Wimsey considered this. The landing can deceive the ear. Mrs. Pike nodded. I know that now. Where were you? In the linen room. How far from the study? Across the passage. And the staircase? Beyond the hall. Wimsey looked toward the corridor. He walked there without hurry, counted several paces, then stopped. Interesting. Mrs. Pike waited. He did not explain. Instead he asked, When did you hear the footsteps? I don't know. According to which clock? She looked embarrassed. The hall clock. Of course. It said 11:20. Wimsey smiled faintly. Did it? Yes. And when you discovered Sir Alister? 11:32 by my watch. Good. He glanced at the staircase. Did you hear anyone after those footsteps? No. Before? No. Did you see Julian? No. Anyone at all? No. Wimsey thanked her. She began to leave. Mrs. Pike? Yes? Did Sir Alister ever carry his spectacle case upstairs? No. He kept it in the study. Even at night? Always. Thank you. She left. Wimsey remained in the hall. A few minutes later, Thomas Rooke appeared. "My lord, Inspector Belling is asking for you. Tell him I am engaged in a serious investigation." "Into what?" "Doors." Thomas blinked. "Very good, my lord." He disappeared. Wimsey walked into the study. The room had been examined repeatedly, yet it retained an oppressive air of having been interrupted rather than searched. The desk stood beneath the window. Sir Alister's chair remained pushed back. Papers were stacked neatly beside the blotter. Wimsey approached the spectacle case. It was a dark leather case, closed and undamaged. He opened it. Empty. He examined the lining, then the hinge, then the clasp. Nothing. He closed it. Lydia March entered. "I was told you wanted me. I wanted to ask you something." "What?" "Did Sir Alister ever leave the study without his spectacles?" "Sometimes. Earlier you said he always wore them. I meant while reading." "Ah." Wimsey smiled. Language again. She frowned. "What does that mean?" "Only that words have an unfortunate tendency to remember precisely what we say, rather than what we intended." He pointed toward the case. "Was that case here yesterday evening?" "Yes." "Did Sir Alister use it?" "I don't know." "Did you see it?" "Yes." "When?" "At 10:17. "During your visit?" "Yes." "Where was it?" "On the desk." Wimsey nodded. "Thank you." Lydia turned to go. "Miss March." She stopped. "Did Sir Alister seem disturbed?" "Yes." "About the old papers?" "I believe so." "Did he say anything?" "He said he had been deceived." "By whom?" "I don't know." Wimsey did not press her. After she left, he returned to the hall. Inspector Belling was waiting there. "Mrs. Pike has changed her story." "People occasionally do. She now says the footsteps came from the study." "So I understand." "That is a serious contradiction." "Yes, which means she may be lying, or remembering." "What's the difference?" "Usually about 4 minutes." Belling stared at him. Wimsey smiled. "You see, Inspector, I have become rather fond of 4 minutes." The inspector looked toward the staircase. If the footsteps came from the study, then someone was moving after the supposed time of the fall, perhaps. And if the study door was open, anyone could have left it. Indeed, then the staircase may not have been where the important event occurred. Wimsey raised an eyebrow. "That is a remarkably energetic conclusion. Is it wrong?" "I didn't say that." Belling sighed. "Then what do you say?" Wimsey looked at the empty spectacle case. "I say that a pair of spectacles has been missing from its proper place, and another pair has been broken somewhere else." "The same pair?" "Quite." He walked toward the stairs. At the 4th step he stopped. The place where the spectacles had lain was now empty. "Why?" Belling asked. "Do you keep staring at that step?" Wimsey looked at him. "Because, Inspector, it has been lying very quietly." He turned away. Neither man spoke for several seconds. Then, from the study, came the faint sound of the door moving upon its hinges. The door had been left open. This time, however, there was no one visible beyond it. Wimsey glanced back only once, his expression unreadable. "Vane Court," he said, "has developed a singular fondness for doors that cannot quite make up their minds, and neither, apparently, can its inhabitants." Section 8. The Staircase Performance. At 9 o'clock, Lord Peter Wimsey sent word through Vane Court that everybody was to assemble in the hall. Inspector Arthur Belling arrived first. Eleanor Vane followed. Julian Vane came reluctantly, then Lydia March, Mrs. Agnes Pike, Thomas Rooke, and finally Dr. Matthew Greaves. "What is this?" Belling demanded. "A rehearsal. For what?" "An accident." Belling stared at him. "I beg your pardon?" Wimsey smiled. "You have already decided that Sir Alister died by falling down these stairs. I thought it only courteous to permit the stairs an opportunity to defend themselves." Eleanor looked uneasy. Lydia remained very still. Wimsey stood at the foot of the staircase and surveyed them. "Nothing elaborate," he said. "No blood, no corpses. We are merely going to discover what a man falling down these stairs can and cannot reasonably be expected to do." He placed a small table beside the banister. Upon it lay an ordinary pair of spectacles. Belling frowned. "Where did you get those?" "Mine. You don't wear spectacles. Exactly. They are therefore wonderfully impartial. Now Sir Alister was accustomed to wearing spectacles when reading. We have established that. We also know that his spectacle case remained in the study. He paused. He had said no more than this before, and now he said nothing further. Instead, he placed the spectacles upon his face. "Suppose," he said, "a gentleman wearing spectacles begins descending." He walked slowly down the first step. His balance alters. Second step. His head moves forward. Third. His hands seek something. He stopped. "Now we shall require a substitute." Belling looked suspicious. "For gravity." Wimsey handed him the spectacles. "Drop them." Belling stared. "You want me to break your spectacles?" "Not those. The other ones." They struck the carpet and remained intact. Wimsey bent and picked them up. Belling dropped them from the fourth stair. This time one lens cracked. Wimsey examined the frame. "Notice." No explanation followed. He placed the spectacles carefully on the fourth step. Then he walked backward toward the landing. "Now suppose the unfortunate gentleman has already fallen." He stopped. "Where would the spectacles be?" Belling looked down. "Wherever they landed, precisely. And if they were broken, they might be anywhere. Then what does this prove?" "Nothing." Wimsey smiled. He asked Julian to stand on the staircase. "Walk down." Julian obeyed. "Now do it as though you were tired." Julian descended. "Now as though you were carrying something." He did so. "Now as though you could not see properly." Julian paused. "I'd hold the banister." "Exactly." Wimsey's tone remained light. Wimsey turned to Mrs. Pike. "When you heard the footsteps, did they sound like someone descending?" "I thought so." "Could they have been ascending?" "Yes." "Could they have come from the study?" She swallowed. "Yes." Wimsey nodded. He looked toward the study door. "Thomas, close that door." The butler did so. Wimsey stood halfway down the staircase. "Now speak." Thomas said, "My lord?" Wimsey nodded. The words sounded muffled. Again, "My lord." "Now open it." The door opened. The sound became clearer. Wimsey's face remained expressionless. Dr. Greaves looked toward him. "The room is well insulated." "Yes." Then Mrs. Pike could have heard movement without distinguishing its direction. Wimsey gave no answer. He walked to the study and examined the door, then the carpet, then the staircase, then the hall clock. Inspector Belling followed him. "You're testing sound, among other things." "Why?" Wimsey looked at the clock. "Because sound travels. And time?" Less obediently. Belling waited. Wimsey turned toward the staircase again. "Now, everyone please watch." He took the spectacles from the table. He placed them upon his face. Then he descended 3 steps. At the 4th he stopped. He removed the spectacles. He held them in one hand. Then he turned away from the staircase. Wimsey returned to the landing. "Miss March," he said, "come here." She obeyed. He handed her the spectacles. "Place them where they were found." She placed them on the 4th step. Wimsey stepped back. The broken bridge of Sir Alister's spectacles had originally been found there. For the first time that evening, Lydia's composure faltered. Wimsey noticed. He said nothing. Belling noticed it too. "Miss March?" She looked at him. "I am tired." "So are we all." Wimsey lifted one hand. "Inspector." Belling turned. "Watch the staircase." Wimsey walked into the study. He remained there for several seconds. Then he returned, carrying a folded sheet of paper. He did not open it. "Where did you find that?" Belling asked. "In a place where paper has been waiting patiently." "What is it?" "Something written by Sir Alister, about Margaret Vale." Wimsey's expression did not change. "Perhaps." Lydia looked sharply toward him. He folded the paper again. Then he walked to the 4th stair. He placed one hand upon the banister and looked down toward the hall. "Now," he said, "I want everyone to imagine that the body is still lying here. The lights are as they were. The clocks disagree. The study door is open. Someone has heard footsteps. The spectacles are broken." He paused. "Everything appears perfectly reasonable." Belling nodded slowly. "Yes." Wimsey looked at him. "And yet the arrangement is theatrical. Meaning only that someone has made an audience of us." Silence settled over the hall. Wimsey descended 1 step. Then another. At the bottom he turned. "Thank you," he said. "The performance is over." Belling frowned. "You haven't explained anything." "No." "When will you?" Wimsey smiled. "When the audience has stopped applauding the wrong actor." He walked toward the library. Behind him, nobody spoke, but Lydia March remained standing beside the fourth stair, staring at the spectacles. And for the first time, the broken glasses seemed less like evidence of a fall than the props of a carefully rehearsed performance. Section 9. The Unmasking. At 10, Lord Peter Wimsey gathered them together in the hall. Inspector Arthur Belling stood beside the staircase, Dr. Matthew Greaves near the library door, Eleanor Vane and Julian Vane beneath the portrait of Sir Alister, while Lydia March remained apart. "The staircase has at last agreed to testify. Sir Alister did not die by falling down these stairs." Belling stared at him. "Then how did he die?" "His fatal injury was inflicted in the study at approximately 10:38 p.m. Dr. Greaves nodded. "That agrees with my first estimate." "Precisely. The medical evidence was right. It was our interpretation of the household's movements that went astray." Wimsey turned toward the hall clock. "It is 4 minutes slow." Thomas Rooke heard footsteps at what he believed to be 11:20. His recollection was anchored to this clock, making his remembered time 4 minutes late. Mrs. Pike used her watch when she discovered the body at 11:32. The kitchen clock was 7 minutes fast. The clocks did not create the deception. People did. Belling frowned. "But why does that matter?" "Because everyone imagines that the staircase event occurred shortly before the body was found." He pointed toward the study. "It did not." He opened the door. At 9:54 p.m., Sir Alister telephoned Reverend Septimus Bell. The exchange record is fixed. The call lasted 6 minutes. He was alive at 10 o'clock. He raised the ledger. At 10:17, Lydia March brought him correspondence. She saw him alive. She left at 10:23. Between 10:31 and 10:36, Sir Alister received someone in this study. There was no locked door. There was simply a person whom he knew well enough to admit, Wimsey continued. At 10:36, the confrontation became violent. His spectacles were knocked from his face. They landed on the carpet intact. He placed his hand upon the banister. At 10:38, Sir Alister received the fatal injury. He died here, in the study, not on the staircase. Dr. Greaves closed his eyes briefly. "Yes, the killer had a problem. A body in the study would invite questions. A fall would provide a simpler story," Belling said. "So the body was moved." "Exactly." At approximately 10:40, the body was carried to the staircase and arranged as though Sir Alister had fallen. The spectacles were deliberately broken and placed several steps above him. But why break them? Because spectacles are persuasive little objects. If they are broken above a body, the mind supplies the missing story. The man was wearing them. He fell, and they broke during the fall. Belling looked at the staircase, but they might have broken in a fall. They might. Except Sir Alister could not have fallen while wearing them, because they were already removed. More importantly, their position is wrong for the proposed movement. He took the spare spectacles from the table. "During our demonstration, you saw what happens when spectacles are worn during a fall. They travel with the head or body, not conveniently several steps above the corpse. The killer placed them there." "Yes." "Then what about the footsteps?" "Mrs. Pike heard them after the murder." "Who made them?" Wimsey looked at Lydia. The study door was left ajar. Mrs. Pike heard movement from the study, but because she was near the landing and the hall clock showed a misleading time, she reconstructed the sound as footsteps on the staircase. "I thought I heard someone coming down." "You heard someone moving through the house after the killing," Belling said. "And Julian, a red herring." Julian stared at him. "Your quarrel supplied motive, your muddy boots supplied appearance, your walk supplied opportunity. But the lake path accounts for your absence, and nothing places you at the staircase at the relevant time," Wimsey continued. "The mud, quarrel, and anger were real. That is why the deception worked. A fabricated suspect is often less convincing than an innocent man who happens to look guilty." He turned to the old ledger. Now the reason. Lydia's face had gone white. Margaret Vale was accused of stealing money from the parish school. Sir Alister spent months proving that accusation false. He discovered that the evidence had been manipulated and that the person responsible had concealed the truth for decades. Eleanor whispered, "Who?" Wimsey looked at Lydia. "Miss March." Belling stepped forward. "No. Yes." Lydia's voice was barely audible. "You cannot prove it." "I can." He held up the folded paper. Sir Alister wrote, "Tomorrow I shall ask her why." He had discovered that Margaret Vale's disgrace was connected to Lydia's secret. Lydia shook her head. "My name was never Margaret." "No, but Margaret was your mother." Wimsey spoke gently. "You knew the truth. Your family had lived beneath that old shame. Sir Alister intended to expose the falsehood, and you feared the respectable life you had built would collapse. I only wanted the papers." "You confronted him." "Yes. At 10:36 you struggled with him." "Yes. And at 10:38 you struck him." Lydia's hands trembled. "I did not mean to kill him." "I believe you." She looked at him. "That is the tragedy." Belling stepped forward. "You staged the fall." Lydia began to cry. "I thought if everyone believed he had fallen, nobody would ask what happened in the study." "And the spectacles?" "I broke them." "Why? To make it look real?" Wimsey nodded. "You made one mistake." Lydia looked up. "The spectacles were more truthful than you. The clocks, the footsteps, the boots, the open door, each became part of the false story, but none altered the true time. Sir Alister died at 10:38. Lydia sank into the nearest chair. "I only wanted to protect what remained." Wimsey regarded her sadly. "That, Miss March, is how people murder the past and discover that it has learned to murder them." Inspector Belling took her arm. The hall fell silent. On the staircase, the broken spectacles remained absent, but the false story they had told was finally broken. Section 10. The Woman Who Knew Too Much. Lydia March did not resist when Inspector Arthur Belling took her arm. "I did not murder him," she said. Belling stopped. "You have just admitted striking him." "I said I did not murder him." Wimsey regarded her quietly. "An interesting distinction. I struck him because he threatened to expose everything. He was angry. I was frightened, but I did not intend his death." "I believe you." She looked at him. "That is the tragedy." Belling's expression had changed. The satisfaction of having found a culprit was absent. What remained was professional severity. "You knew about the spectacles." "Yes." "You broke them." "Yes." "You placed them above the body." "Yes." "Why there?" "Because that was where they would have been if he had fallen." Wimsey shook his head gently. "No, that was where you imagined they would have been." She looked at him. "I thought it was convincing." It was, almost. Julian Vane, who had remained silent throughout the unmasking, suddenly spoke. "And Margaret Vale?" Lydia's face changed. "My mother." Eleanor drew a breath. "You never told anyone?" "No." "Why?" "Her name had been destroyed." Wimsey's voice was softer now. "And Sir Alister discovered the truth?" "Yes." "After all those years?" "Yes." "He intended to clear her name. He intended to publish everything." "Not immediately." "No. Tomorrow." Lydia gave a bitter smile. "He always believed there was another day." Wimsey looked toward the study. "There usually is, until there isn't." She covered her face. "I begged him not to do it. He refused. He said truth was not something he could keep locked away merely because it embarrassed the living." Lydia laughed once, unexpectedly, and the sound broke into a sob. "I hated him for saying it." Belling waited. "What happened then?" "I took the paper from his hand." "The old evidence?" "Yes." "He tried to retrieve it." "Yes." "You struck him?" "Yes." "With what?" Lydia hesitated. "My hand first, then the corner of the desk." Dr. Greaves looked toward Wimsey. "That would explain the injury." Wimsey nodded. Lydia continued. "When he fell, I thought he would recover, but he did not." "No. You discovered he was dead." "I knew." Her voice became very small. "Then you staged the fall?" "Yes." "You carried him to the staircase?" "Yes." "You removed his spectacles before moving him?" "They were on the carpet." "Then you broke them?" Yes, afterward, I returned to the study. Why? To put things back. Then, I closed nothing. I wanted it to look as though he had left naturally. Yet the study door remained ajar. Yes. And you left through the corridor. Yes. That was when Mrs. Pike heard you. Lydia nodded. I did not know she was there. And the footsteps? I walked normally. Not quickly. No. That is why she heard only ordinary footsteps. Lydia looked at him. Why did she not see me? Because she was in the linen room. And the clock? The hall clock was 4 minutes slow. I did not alter it. I know. Then how did it help me? It did not help you deliberately. That is precisely why the deception succeeded. Everyone fitted their memories to it. Lydia lowered her head. I returned to my room at about 10:47. Yes, I changed my dress. Why? Because I had blood on my cuff. Eleanor looked away. Wimsey did not. You relied upon the appearance of guilt. I relied upon what people already wanted to believe. Wimsey gave a faint, sad smile. That is the oldest accomplice in the world. Lydia looked at him. Will they believe me now? They will believe the evidence. And my mother. Her name can be cleared. Lydia began to cry again. I wanted that. I know. Then why does it feel like I have destroyed everything? Because you attempted to save a memory by sacrificing a life. There was no answer to that. Inspector Belling removed his hat. Miss March, I must formally place you under arrest. Lydia stood. Before leaving, she looked once toward the staircase. The spectacles. Yes, I thought they would make everyone understand. Wimsey glanced at the empty 4th step. They did. That was the trouble. Belling led her toward the hall. Julian remained beside Eleanor. Dr. Greaves quietly closed his medical notebook. Wimsey picked up his gloves. As Lydia reached the door, she turned. Lord Peter. Yes? Did you know from the beginning? Wimsey smiled. My dear Miss March, from the beginning I knew only that the staircase was receiving rather too much credit. She gave a broken little smile. Then she was gone. The door closed. For several moments nobody moved. At last Eleanor whispered she loved her mother. Yes, said Wimsey, and hated what had been done to her. Yes, could that really make someone do this? Wimsey looked toward the rain-darkened garden. People are capable of extraordinary things when they mistake protection for redemption. He put on his gloves. Inspector Belling returned from the doorway. I owe you an apology. Don't be absurd. I was ready to arrest Julian. You were ready to believe the Boots. They looked persuasive. Boots generally do. They have the advantage of never contradicting their owners. Belling almost smiled. And the spectacles? Wimsey glanced toward the staircase. They were persuasive too, yet they lied. No, they merely allowed everyone else to lie for them. He opened the door. Cold air entered the hall. Behind him, Vane Court seemed suddenly less haunted, but the old staircase remained exactly where it had always been, silent, polished, and entirely innocent of the stories told upon it. By 11:30, Vane Court had returned to the outward appearance of civilization. A house might contain a corpse, 3 mutually incompatible accounts of the evening, a ruined reputation, and enough family resentment to poison the water supply. Yet once the police had gone and the tea things had been washed, it could look almost respectable. Inspector Arthur Belling stood in the hall with his coat buttoned. I shall send a constable for the remaining papers tomorrow. Very wise. And Dr. Greaves will provide his final report. Even wiser. Belling glanced at the staircase. I still cannot quite believe the spectacles deceived everyone. They did not deceive everyone. Most people, said Wimsey, are perfectly capable of deceiving themselves without assistance. Belling smiled. That sounds like something you have been waiting to say. I have been waiting several hours. Eleanor Vane came from the drawing room. Inspector, shall I show you out? Belling nodded. Before leaving, he turned to Wimsey. You're not staying? No. I have developed a violent longing for my own bed. You'll return to London tonight? Unless the railway company has committed murder. They shook hands. When the door closed behind him, Eleanor remained beside Wimsey. The house feels different. Yes, quieter. There was something comforting in that silence. It suggested that the house, having been forced to surrender its secret, might return to ordinary concerns, breakfasts, letters, accounts, weather, and the ceremonials by which respectable people persuade themselves that life is orderly. Wimsey, who knew better, regarded the notion with scepticism. Guilt is generally noisy while it is being concealed. Once exposed, it becomes remarkably economical. Eleanor looked toward the staircase. "Do you think my uncle deserved what happened?" "No. He could be cruel, certainly, proud, almost professionally. He destroyed people, sometimes," she sighed. "Then why do I feel sorry for Lydia? Because you are human." Eleanor gave a faint smile. "That seems a dangerous condition, extremely." They stood together in silence. Then Eleanor said, "Will Margaret Vale's name really be cleared?" "Yes. How?" "The old ledger, Sir Alister's notes, and the surviving financial records will establish that the accusation against her cannot stand. And Lydia," Wimsey paused, "that depends upon the law." Eleanor looked down. She did not mean to kill him. No. But she killed him. Yes. Then what is justice? Wimsey considered the question. A rather difficult invention, which mankind keeps repairing and never quite finishes. He moved toward the staircase. At the fourth step he stopped. The place where the spectacles had been found looked utterly ordinary now. That, perhaps, was the strangest thing about it. No stain remained, no broken glass glittered, no ghostly presence lingered upon the carpet. There was only wood, wool, and the faint scent of furniture polish. Eleanor joined him. "Does it ever frighten you?" "What?" "Murder," Wimsey considered. "The murder itself? No. The people who commit it? Sometimes. Why?" "Because they are generally people one has been speaking to over tea." She looked at him. "That is a dreadful thought. People are capable of extraordinary things when they mistake protection for redemption." He put on his gloves. Eleanor smiled faintly. "You always make things sound simple, only after someone has made them appalling." He looked once more at the staircase. The broken spectacles were meant to tell a story. What story? That Sir Alister had fallen, and they failed, eventually, because of the clocks, among other things, the spectacles. Wimsey smiled. "The most eloquent witnesses are sometimes the least reliable." Eleanor laughed softly. "You sound almost fond of them." "I have a weakness for objects that become involved in human folly." He walked toward the hall. At the door he paused. "Miss Vane." "Yes?" "Do not have the staircase altered." "Why not?" "Because it has suffered enough slander." She laughed again. For the first time since Sir Alister's death, the sound seemed natural. Wimsey stepped outside. The rain had ceased completely. The gravel shone beneath the lamps, and beyond the gate the road stretched pale and empty toward Belminster. Thomas Rook held the gate open. "My lord." "Thank you, Rook. Will you be coming back?" "I hope not." Rook raised an eyebrow. "My lord." "A house that has entertained one murder rarely has the courtesy to stop at one." Thomas looked solemn. "I shall bear that in mind." "Do. And keep an eye on the clocks." "Yes, my lord." Wimsey walked a few paces, then stopped. He looked back at Vane Court. The upper windows were dark. The staircase, invisible from outside, remained within its walls. For a moment he thought of Sir Alister's final evening, of the old accusation against Margaret Vale, and of Lydia March's desperate attempt to protect a dead woman's name by destroying a living man's life. There was no supernatural curse upon Vane Court. There had never been. Only memory. Only fear. Only the extraordinary capacity of ordinary people to construct elaborate prisons from shame and call them homes. Wimsey drew deeply upon his cigarette. "Et tu, staircase," he murmured, "a remarkably poor witness." Then he turned toward the road. The village clock struck midnight. This time, every clock in Vane Court agreed. And that, Lord Peter Wimsey thought, was almost enough to make him suspicious. He raised his collar against the night air and continued toward the station, leaving Vane Court behind with its polished banisters, its respectable rooms, and its newly silent staircase. Somewhere in London there would be breakfast tomorrow, there would be newspapers, there would be questions, there would be the tedious machinery of justice, and there would, eventually, be Margaret Vale's name restored to the ledger. Wimsey smiled. For once, the dead had been given the last word. If you enjoyed the case, tell us in the comments which clue fooled you most, or whether you suspected the truth before Wimsey revealed it. And if you would like another classic mystery, stay with us for the next case. He walked on beneath the pale lamps. The road was empty, the night was quiet, and the staircase kept its silence.